Hello, welcome back to Chair Shot Wrestling Podcast. This is Steve O'Mac. I'm still here with Deano D-Truth. We are going to now talk about everything that's happened in wrestling this week. So we're talking 6th of to today. We're currently Wednesday the 13th. So Deano, I'm going to start off. Let's start off with talking a little bit about AEW because that happened last Wednesday. There was not a great deal to cover on this, but I guess the big talking points are, again, to do with Darby Allin's current sort of title reign.
Which can I currently say, sorry to interrupt you,
No.
Darby Allin, I did not get him for the longest time. And, everyone was so into him. But I'm actually really, really enjoying his current title run. And I'm happy enough to admit I was wrong. And he is really growing on me now because I'm sort of getting, he's this raw, gritty character, sort of like Mankind was when Mankind, won the title. And, he wasn't, he didn't look like a wrestler. And it's like for different reasons, they don't look like wrestlers. But he's gritty character and he's like, I'll do anything to win. And the crowd getting behind him and, fighting champion. He's a man of the people, I sort of, he is growing on me and I'm sort of starting to finally understand the Darby Allin hype, to be honest with you, which I'm happy about, which I could currently say as well. I thought both his matches he had this week, I thought were fantastic, especially I really enjoyed, you're going to go back and cover it, you want to talk about it, is the pack stuff. And there's this big at the minute, my mate got me into it, they're doing this golf simulator thing and they've got the indoor arenas. And I thought it was so cool to, it felt like the nostalgia thing come back. Something different. You felt like you were watching something a bit special, like, the silly shit they used to do back in the day with Crash Holly when he'd fight in like the ball pin and, he'd be at his house and they'd break in and
you get like a bowling alley brawl or something.
And it's just like, it was cool because I don't think there's enough of that nowadays because it's like, we're going to go and cover this more, but it's like Backlash this week. I thought, WrestleMania could tell you were watching, even though people have their faults of it, and I've got my faults and my positives with it, like we covered last week. But you tell you're watching something special because the stages were different. You could tell. For me, if you would just come in from work and someone had Backlash on and you wasn't the biggest wrestling fan, you would probably think, oh, this is just a Raw or SmackDown, because the ring looked completely normal and like the entranceway looked completely normal. And do you remember back in the day, the specialness of it, like Vince would always decorate, even if it was like a small pay-per-view and weren't like one of the big four, like Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania. It was, even if it was like an Armageddon or a Judgment Day or or Backlash, like it was, there was always a special walkway and there was always, a special stage thing, and you could tell you were watching something a little bit more special and a little bit more different. And that's why, especially back in the day, you didn't mind paying the money for it and stuff like that to watch it, rather than just watch it on your TV, like the subscription like Netflix or Sky Sports back in the day, you'd actually pay box office for it. And that's why it's a little bit special. And that's why I think AEW, that's why I think a lot of wrestling fans are gravitating to it, is because they love the nostalgia of it. They do the nostalgic things. They have a lot of the old-time guys coming back, because I think Tony Khan's such a big wrestling fan. And you could tell you were watching something special and you were watching something a little bit different, and I absolutely loved it. Even though they didn't do too much, on the fighting green, but it reminded me, it put me in mind of a little bit when they were on the bowling green, like the Buried Alive matches back in the day. Like, you had Taker against Stone Cold, or the one where was it Mankind, was it Rock and Sock against Kane, and then, Triple H come out with a sledgehammer and done them all. It was just cool, it was like something different. It was on, that's what it put me in mind of a little bit. It was like, when it was like they were fighting on the, the dirt mounds and that in the graveyard of the Buried Alive match. But anyway, what was you going to say about it?
I was going to say, you've got to remember that the staging for each pay-per-view back then was massive, because if you think about the the Smackdown series of computer games and that stages and stuff were like unlockables. As you were playing the game, it'd be like, oh, you've unlocked the Backlash stage, or you've unlocked what was another one of their?
Oh, I remember I remember a big one
like
for me.
No Mercy and stuff like that. They all had their own unique look, didn't they?
And they used it. I remember one of the big memories for me, because going back to what I was saying earlier, Chris Jericho's my favourite, and I think it was Armageddon 2000, and Kane and Jericho had the last man standing match, and he actually beat Kane by, he had all these barrels, and he tipped the barrels on top of Kane and knocked him out. And then at the end, Kane had the big reveal where he was still alive, and he put his he was still alive, and he put his hand through the barrels. It was sort of like the super shredder. It reminded me of the Ninja Turtles with the super shredder at the end, where he sort of puts his hand out, reference Kevin Nash, man. And he put his hand through, and it was he's still alive, the monster's still alive. And I thought, that was just great. But there's other ones where it was you had I can't remember what pay-per-view it was with the cars, and people were getting suplex onto the cars and stuff like that. It was it was just great.
They did a lot more out ring stuff, didn't they? I think.
Yeah.
Back then.
Which made everyone love WWE. It was a bit interesting. Sometimes you get bored with just watching wrestling matches all the time, and it's like going back to what I said. You need like a buffet in it. You don't want to eat the same thing at a buffet. You want to have a variety, and it's it's great, all the great matches, and who doesn't love it? But sometimes you need a little different match, a section and that. Just it's something a bit different, Otherwise, just too intense for me, But also, I love what they do, and that's why I I enjoyed referencing WWE. So I don't want to give all the praise to AEW, but the Danhausen stuff, I really enjoyed the same thing. But yeah.
Right. Okay. So if let's come back to Darby Allin's current reign. So I'm gonna sort of say, I get where you're coming from with the Darby Allin thing. I've always liked Darby Allin, but I'm not sure that I ever really saw him as being the guy and being the champion. And I did wonder. I mean, there'd been a lot of talk for at least 12 months now, maybe even longer than that, because I think a lot of people thought that they were building this story up for Darby to win the belt off of Moxley. Back at All in Texas last year.
Didn't he get
Yeah, well, he went on. No,
Mount Everest, wasn't it?
Yeah, he decided he had that opportunity to go and climb Everest, and they gave him that time out, and they had an injury angle for him. And I felt like Tony Khan he'd already made up his mind that he wanted to give the belt to him, and he's sort of held off, and he's held off, and he's held off, and he's let him have this long story against the Death Riders. And I was kind of just thinking, I don't know, I liked the way that he won it off of MJF. I didn't have a problem with that. I know a lot of people did. I didn't have a problem with that because for me, the story fit, because it fit into the story of MJF more so than the story of Darby Allin. It fit into the story of MJF. MJF, he is this guy that is insecure. He does.
Can I just say, Tom,
yeah, go on.
For how excited are you, which I absolutely loved, because another nostalgic throwback. I'm really excited where they're going to take it with it. Not only for the match, but for the promos before that they're doing the title versus hair thing. And I just think, how cool is that going to be? Because like you said, it just makes sense. And especially growing up around here, it's people are a lot, he's so vain. And, we live in an area it's called, Leon C. Essex, where
the only way is Essex.
People are so vain around here, and it's I could imagine loads of my mates are really scared of losing their hair, and have had all the transplants done. So it's mad, because I thought it was brilliant, because I thought it's got caught up with the nostalgia of wrestling, because all the classic hair versus hair matches back in the day. But they've also made it current, because it's such a big thing now, because all these hair transplants in Turkey, and all these, people are going to get them done and paying thousands and thousands of pounds to keep a set of hair, and it's I think it's just great, because you've got all these, it's getting nostalgia, but it's also joining up with popular culture, and it's what's current. It's like current news meets nostalgia for me. And I just think, I think the best person to play that is MJF, because he is, he's cool, suave, sort of I always call him the modern day Flair. And he's that Flair, he's just cool. I remember when he won the title and he come out of all these hot girls, and he's hot redhead girlfriend was there at the time, and he sort of starts making out of her in the ring. And I thought, yeah, this guy's cool. Do you know what I mean? So he's the best person to sort of carry this storyline. And I'm really, really excited to see that in the following weeks. It's making me want to watch AEW even more, because I'm excited to see where they're going to go with this. Yeah. And I'm excited to see the pay-per-view. It's really interesting. I feel instead of wanting to watch the pay-per-view, I feel I need to watch the pay-per-view. And let me tell you, I'm actually at a friend's wedding in Ireland, in Belfast that weekend. And, I'll be making sure I'm back in my room watching that live. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to get it on the TV somehow, and I'm going to, I'm not missing that one for love nor money, I'm excited. But that's what's cool. It's making me want to watch it, and it's making me want to, see.
Yeah.
For you saying, it's like, I don't just want to, tune into, I feel like if I go onto Facebook or Instagram after the pay-per-view's happened and I see a picture of MJF bald, not that I'm saying it is going to happen because I don't think it will. I think he's going to win the title back. But if I want to see a vision bald, I'd feel like, oh no, I've missed a great moment I could have watched live, and it'll niggle with me, and I feel like that's what's great. It's making me want to watch it, and making me feel like I need to watch it, So
I think there's a few things that AEW have just done really, really well with this. Okay, first of all, I think the idea of Darby being this kind of almost like it's like he's on self-destruct mode, right? He's beat MJF, he's got the belt, and now not only is he defended it once a week, but this week he's defended it twice in 1 week.
Which is also
he's like this fighting champion.
Yeah.
They've managed to have some absolutely cracking matches against guys that you would say are like mid-carders. The Tommaso Ciampa match I thought was brilliant. Who else has he defended against? He defended against Brody King. Thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
The Kevin Knight match that we had on Dynamite, again, another really good match. Different styles of wrestlers as well. Brody King being a guy that it's a giant against a smaller guy. Tommaso Ciampa being like this wrestling machine kind of guy. Kevin Knight being his high flyer. So it's different styles of matches.
Say that he can sort of like, you sort of need people out of the company because he can have a good match with anyone, and he makes it believable, like it was like, when he beat that, what's his name, the Brody King, obviously he's a lot more physical, imposing opponent to him, but the way he sort of done it, where he like sort of, put a move, like, he done the move outside on the exposed concrete floor, which is another throwback. They used to do a lot more in WWE. I remember, obviously I didn't watch it live, but it was, when Jake done it to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, and it was like, it was so believable, and it was believable because he actually really hurt his head for real, didn't he? And it was like he had to have, and go to get attention for it. But, it was that. And then he done the coffin drop, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And you thought, well, fair enough, like if I had a fight with a geezer who was a lot bigger than me and I smashed his head into concrete,
you're gonna have to go that far.
And I hit him not once, not twice, but 3 times, maybe I would knock him out, and it's like even like someone who's just, I wouldn't have a chance with, if I was lucky enough to get a move like that. And so it made it more believable that I was watching a real fight feel. It weren't just like, oh yeah, cool, so he ain't gonna beat him with his finisher, it was like they made it, oh yeah, well he actually won. Like Chris Jericho, like I'm saying, he threw the metal things on Kane, like I just said about the barrels. Like it's like, yeah, that's cool, like he had to do that to beat the monster. And then it's not also that way. It's not also destroying Brody King's character where, he got beat by a lot. He got beat by a lot smaller guy. He's obviously they're burying him, as people like saying in the industry. But that's what I feel about it.
Yeah. Also, so I like the way that this now ties in with the MJF story, because we know that the next pay-per-view is in New York. Apparently, it's like literally a couple of miles down the road from Long Island, so it is almost MJF territory. You know that he's going to have a crowd the crowd's going to be split. Because he does get a lot of home support, so that's going to make a really, really good atmosphere, I think, for this match. But also, I feel like they've just put just enough doubt in everyone's head. I think initially everyone thought, right, yeah, Darby Allin, he's probably going to have a short reign. He's probably going to win it. Then they're going to drop it back to MJF because he's the main guy, and I don't mind that. And I think I said this at the time when he lost it, right? This was my main point when everyone was up in arms saying, oh, I can't believe MJF lost the title. Look, Ric Flair didn't win 16 because he had 2 or 3 year title reigns, okay? Ric Flair's title reigns were very, very short for a lot of those, for a lot of those 16. And I think it's important to remember that if you want MJF to be this guy, if you are going to build in this Ric Flair storyline with him, that he needs to be one of the greatest of all time, then you have to give him some shorter reigns and let him win it
Well,
back.
I think going back with Ric Flair, like I watched a lot of his stuff on YouTube, and like I said, a bit of tape collecting. I mean, some of his territory wins. I mean, they would put the title on people for a week just so he could sort of go, and the hometown hero would win the belt. Whether it was like the Texas territory or like the or like the California territory or the New York territory. That people would go in and he wins the title, so he's hometown hero. And he's like, well, I have to have it back, to go back to the his territory afterwards, So there would be like weak reigns and that and stuff like that, So that was, like you said, it's probably like the same thing, they've give. And I feel like it's like a thank you to Darby Allin to being such a company man.
100%.
It's like Rey Mysterio, like he didn't have the longest title run, and he probably wasn't that believable as a champion. He was this little guy, and but for kids to probably there's a lot of kids that probably look at Darby Allin the way I looked at Rey Mysterio, because he's like, this smaller comic book character, and kids gravitate towards him, and all this insane stuff he does. It's probably the same thing, and it probably is exciting for young kids and they're 11, 12 years old, like I was that age when Mysterio won it, and it's they're probably watching it, and it's for he's got to do it for everyone. So that's why I feel like they've given him the title for a short period anyway,
I got to say, I mean, imagine Darby Allin in the Attitude Era. He'd have been massive.
Yeah.
That character, as it is now, this kind of never say die, do anything, fearless, he'd have been huge.
Yeah.
He'd have been absolutely huge. Coming back to the main event then, so the MJF Darby Allin, so I think they've been clever, that they've just given enough element of doubt, because we know, right, that MJF is making a lot of movies, right? We know that he's in demand. We know that he's getting booked for movies. Now, there could be, right, for all we know, there could be a part coming up that requires him to have his head shaved. And this could just be a really, really clever way of making everyone thinking, oh, there's no way that MJF's going to have his head shaved. It's something on the line. It's going to get him to fight harder than before, and it's going to get him to beat Darby Allin because he don't want to lose his hair. But on the flip side of that, it could just be a brilliant moment. He might be losing his hair anyway, and he might have to grow it back. Right, or he might be going to have another transplant or something like that. In which case, if he's going to have another transplant and he is going full on, I'm going to have my head shaved before they do the work, they might just be using it as an angle. It's really interesting. I would not be shocked if he got his head shaved. It wouldn't be a shock.
It'd be a cool storyline. Do you remember, I know it weren't as big, but I mean, you remember the Cody Rhodes was the dashing Cody Rhodes, and he had the thing, and then he was the ugly, he was the character,
the mask,
and I quite liked it. I thought it was good character work where he'd put the paper bags over people's heads and stuff maybe there's a more menacing character where or maybe he comes out with he comes out with a wig on or something, and
could be a bit.
Talent is people try and take the wig off him and stuff like that, and he's really
give him a bit more comedy value for a short spell.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you this, right? If you're talking about hair versus hair matches, right? Did you ever think at any point that Vince McMahon would have had his hair shaved?
Well, I did when I thought it probably wouldn't be Donald Trump. I mean, that's the only thing.
Yeah, but at the time, don't forget, we're not talking about President Trump. We're talking about, he's got an ego and he's a businessman. But, I mean, this is Vince McMahon. This is the boss. This is the guy.
But everyone always said with Vince, and everyone that had done interviews and talked about Vince always said that Vince McMahon would never ask that people to do something that he wouldn't do himself, because he was always fully committed, and he was such, he's so you want about him, he's obviously, I know there's a lot of controversy with him now because the stuff that come out after he'd gone, but his love for the company was his life. It was his life, he would do anything. He'd even do angles where he's sort of whoring his daughter out and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Close to it.
What a lot of guys would be comfortable,
there was a lot of stuff there that probably hasn't dated very well.
No,
but
exactly.
At the time, that was the world that we lived in, and it was it was edgy but acceptable. Now that would go down like a lead balloon, right?
Yeah.
But it was of its time.
Yeah.
So coming back to another point that he was making, so the Darby Allin Pac match, I'm just gonna leave off on that because I feel like I want to talk about that, just that little event, that Fairway to Hell event that sort of caught me off guard really because I wasn't really sure what it was going to be about.
I don't normally get excited for Collision, but it's making me want to watch Collision.
They're making improvements, aren't they?
I sort of it's sort of like, I think they've sort of decided, especially because they're sort of getting into more popular now, and they're becoming more of a rival for WWE, where before they were the definite, they're like a gnat, a fly in the ointment to WWE, and it was like, and now they're sort of like, making WWE stand up and take notice. I think where WWE have the two shows is Raw and SmackDown. I feel like they're thinking, maybe we need to have Dynamite and Collision, if we're going to have any hope of sort of being even like slightly compared to WWE, which, if they're going to move on. So that's what I think. But, like they had a title match on it. So, that's making you, I think you told me to watch it, but I think I see a clip of like, Pac and Darby fighting on the fairway. And I thought, man, I've got to go and watch that, and it made me want to watch it, so.
Hold fire. We'll do a full review. I think it deserves a full review on it in a minute.
Yeah.
Because we've got to try and paint this picture for people that haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, that I guess that coming back to Dynamite, that was probably the main thing that's happened on Dynamite is that we're moving forward with this Darby Allin title reign. We now know that there's a stipulation on the line for the next pay-per-view. But I've been really, really impressed with the quality of the matches and the quality, I guess, of the storyline that they've given. I'm really on board with it, and I think, I can't predict at the minute who's going to win that one. So, SmackDown, okay? There's one talking point that I want to talk about SmackDown. So we're moving on to Friday night, okay? The big thing for me, right? And I'll tell you how I felt about it. You can go first, and then I'm going to tell you my thoughts. All I'm going to say to you is the gingerbread man's funeral. Right, because that was the episode of SmackDown this week.
Yeah.
There's not much else to talk about apart from a bit of build for the future for a couple of other matches. But the main thing was about this. So, Dino, the gingerbread man's funeral.
Yeah,
what are you thinking?
I mean, like I didn't understand it, and I thought it was stupid. But it's like back to this thing, where not a lot of WWE in the 90s and the 2000s made sense. They just had ridiculous storylines. You think, what is going on? But it was so stupid. I actually it was like watching one of them old school films where it's so bad that it's good, and it was just like, it was great. And I think I absolutely now, like, one bright spot for me, because WWE has been a little bit flat as of late, is Trick Williams. I absolutely am so behind Trick Williams, and I can't wait to see what he's going to do next. I gave you a comparison, and you sort of agreed to me off air that Trick Williams sort of gives me vibes of The Rock in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Because he's a good-looking guy. He's cool. He's cool on the other side of the pillow, and he's like, he just oozes cool, without like even trying to be cool. And he just has the catchphrases for days,
Is that one of his lines?
I can't
cooler than the other side of the pillow? Because that sounds like
I always say that.
It should be a Trick Williams line.
I always say I'm cooler than the other side of the pillow. You know what I mean? Even though I like saying it. You know what I mean? So he just like, it's the lemon pepper steppers things, like, I'm going to put on my lemon pepper steppers and come down to the ring. And it's like the Rock back in the day where you say, I'm going to take off my shoes, shine them up real nice and stick them straight up your caddy ass. It was just things like that. It was just like, but as he said it, you're like, yes, you want to get behind him saying it. And it's like, he comes to the ring and it's like, whoop that trick, and all that. And it's like, the crowd is so behind it, and it's so cool. And I don't really know much about him, but like this little Yachty, like he, my mate watched it with me, my mate Jake, and he he's big into more into the like modern day like rap, hip hop stuff. So he's like, bloody hell, is that little Yachty? And he was so excited to see him, and I felt like, you could tell like he's just behind the He probably don't need the money and that. He's obviously, I could tell he's a global superstar, so he probably doesn't need the money. He's probably just, he's like probably like really likes Triple, and they might be friends out of the ring, and he probably he's probably living his like childhood dream now, just being in the ring with like this character and that. But yeah, if I could compare Trick to anyone, it'd be The Rock. He's got a limited moveset, like The Rock had a sort of limited moveset. Rock would have his, his move, the Samoan drop, then he'd have obviously the people's elbow, the rock bottom. But as he's doing it, like he would call for the rock bottom, like he calls for this trick shot, and you just so behind it, and it just like the moves that just meant something, like which the Rock people like the Rock and Cena done really well, But he just, I don't know, he gives me the Rock vibes. He gives me the Rock vibes. I think because he's so effortlessly cool and good looking, and like he's a natural athlete, and he's naturally like gifted. He probably doesn't even have to spend that much time in the gym and that, and he's like, he just comes out. He's always like immaculately dressed, like the Rock used to wear. He's like really expensive shoes with like the Versace, really Larry Versace shirts, and like Timmy wears like the fur coat. He's got a big chain, and I just think he oozes cool, and like I think people just like he is. You could tell he doesn't. He probably doesn't. He's never had a problem getting a date, has he, on the weekend? You know what I mean? Like he just naturally, but yeah, that's what he reminds me of. He comes out with the sunglasses, like the Rock used to come out with the shades on all the time, and like. I just love that. I can't stop saying it. I'll get my lemon pepper steppers and that. I just think it's so silly. It's just great.
I think this angle that they've done, this little story that they told throughout SmackDown, is probably going to be one of these ones that people will talk about in 10 years' time. I feel like it will be one of them ones that like clips will just pop up and as like a little memory thing. Because I'm convinced he's going to be a superstar, right? I think Trick Williams is going to be massive. If he's not, then someone's dropped the ball somewhere.
He will be. He'll be either main event in WrestleMania next year or the year after. Within the next 2 WrestleManias, he'll be the main event. And if he isn't, something has gone horribly wrong somewhere, and there's something going on behind the scenes we don't know about, because he is too good. And you could just imagine him not only being the champion, being that poster boy, like The Rock was, like Austin was, like Cena was, like, do you know what I mean? Like, he's just cool. Like, you could just imagine him on like, the talk shows, and like being on like, being on posters and being in front covers of magazines. Like, he's got that it factor, hasn't he? Where he's just like,
I think that's shining through already. I mean, the idea of this funeral for the gingerbread man, to begin with, I couldn't quite work out whether I liked it or not. It was so mental that like the commentary on it was all so serious. And bearing in mind that they had this little tribute to Ted Turner that came up at the start of SmackDown as well, because he'd passed away a few days before. And it kind of felt like they were being really serious about it. But then, but it's the gingerbread man. And I'm like, I didn't know whether it was a bit distasteful or whether it was a bit insensitive to the Ted Turner family. But I mean, why would WWE be sensitive to that?
It was, but it was
the sketch, and you've watched it as well, right? The sketch I thought was I couldn't help but chuckle. So we've got this kind of open coffin wake, and you've got R-Truth that's in there, and he does a little comedy bit with Sami Zayn, who's kind of seems to be the only sane person there.
Can I just stop you there?
Yeah,
go back to one thing. I mean, the Ted Turner thing, it's harsh, and it is because, rest in peace, and you should never mock the dead, within, certain reasons, like there should never be a reason where you go, you should respect the dead and that, and it's like, but I feel like he declared war on WWE a long time ago, and it was a war, no doubt about it. It was nothing like, for us fans watching it was fun, but, he physically wanted to ruin McMahon. And, you've got a lot of backroom staff there. You've got Bruce Pritchard, who was Vince McMahon's right man for years. You've got Michael Hayes, that were obviously around for their Monday Night Wars. And, like, they the hatred they probably had for each other, because he would do things like, encourage Bischoff to come out, and like they'd have this show built, and like, because they weren't live, they'd ruin their results and like ruin the show, and they were trying to steal their stars, and it's like probably they took it very personally. It probably wasn't like a case of it's like all fair. Like, it was a war, and it was like someone's going out of business. And for them, like Ted Turner had other things, he had the network and that, and he even if WCW went off air, but a lot of those people went off air, like Bruce Pritchard could have been out of a job, Michael Hayes could have been out of a job, and, they wouldn't have been able to feed their families, and it's like, it's different because it weren't, they probably weren't as rich as they were now. And it's like, they probably took it a lot more personally, and it was for them, they probably thought, yeah, we've given him his 10 seconds here, like, and then like, we don't care if it sounds like we're mocking him. Do you know what I mean? They probably did think like that, like it was different, It's like, if someone went to war with you, I don't think like, you know, you're gonna
No,
worry
well,
that much, you know.
I mean, I don't think WWE. I mean, I think we've learned this probably through the whole Goldberg and people, like even Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle obviously was a WWE star before he went elsewhere, but I feel like sometimes whenever someone goes against WWE or if they go to another show that is trying to rival them, it does seem to kind of cut them off from being or from getting their flowers that they deserve, at the end of the day. I didn't agree with the way that Goldberg went out. I didn't really agree with the way that
No,
Kurt
that
Angle
felt
went
like
out.
disrespect, didn't it? I mean, like,
Yeah, so
I mean, I
look,
was
we
never a
we
big
know that they've
Goldberg
done
fan.
this.
I couldn't stand Goldberg, because I saw coming. I really didn't like his working. Like, I didn't watch too much WCW. I watched like bits of it, clips. I've seen a lot of the stuff now, but I did not enjoy these matches against Triple H and that. And I just didn't. I was never a big Goldberg fan. I thought it was the era of Goldberg. I suppose if you watch the Streak live and that, it was a bit different. But
Yeah,
but still, I could tell he was a legend to a lot of people, and he deserved a better send off than that.
definitely.
Especially cutting off his retirement speech sort of like mid thing, that was just, yeah. But even like Sting really, like people, I mean, I was happy, like we were talking about the match earlier, I was happy Triple H won, but a lot of people felt like he should have been given his WrestleMania moment and stuff like that, but yeah, so that's what I feel about that really. But yeah, what you said, how did you feel about Backlash?
Well, let me just finish off about the gingerbread men, and we're going to come straight
Okay,
into
go on.
Backlash. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's how I was feeling at the start of it. I couldn't quite work out whether or not this was a good idea that they were doing. That was how I was feeling at the time. I was just thinking, look, I can see they're trying to make this sort of comedy. I'm not really sure this is going to work, right? Then it goes through lots of different stages. You've got like a lot of AI generated video packages where it's showing you, like bits of the past from the Gingerbread Man. They've got him at WrestleMania 3, and they've got him in the crowd when John Cena wins his first title, and they've got him at all of these massive moments through history, which was quite funny. But again, I'm still thinking like, well, where's this going? It's insanity. You get to the last bit where you've got the coffin in the ring, and then Trick Williams is coming down to pay his tribute. And at that point, I absolutely then got why they went ahead with this angle and they did the way it was, because it was brilliant. His music hits, the crowd go mad.
Whoop
that trick.
Yeah, it's so
Literally
great, yeah.
every single person in the whole of this build, and
he just looks like a star as well, with the dry ice coming out and the rotating.
Absolutely
looks like a star.
lapped it up, right? So he comes down and he's got this little kind of glass, and he's sort of doing like a toast to the gingerbread man.
This is
and
great,
it's full of milk. And he just pours it and Wade Barrett's commentary is priceless. He's like, oh yeah, have a drink for the gingerbread man.
Yeah, Wade Barrett was selling it great when he
and the commentary didn't break at all. They was like so serious about this, like this was a WWE star that had passed away. Trick Williams gets into the ring. He's got this choir in the background. He does this kind of little song rap thing, and the delivery of it was just absolutely,
and it's making
top class.
And it's making, because you could tell that like they're going down the route now, that they've realised they've got something with Trick, and they need to sort of turn him face now and sort of make him a baby face, because soon they're going to launch a Trick Williams t-shirt and it's just going to fly out the shelves. It's going to fly off the website, and everyone's going to. I personally will probably get one. I'm not going to lie. And wear it at the gym. But they've sort of made like this classic, Sami Zayn, like this stick in the mud where like everyone's having fun, and he's come out and said, no, this isn't it. And they've made him think, we were really enjoying that and you're ruining it, So they've made Trick Williams look like the good guy because he's sharp Zayn. And, Zayn, they made Zayn, who has been a face for years, especially because, he joined the Uso stuff, when he was the honorary Uso and that. And he's like, they've made him into such a face lately that they've now been able to turn him heel. And then, we'll get back to Backlash. They made him look like a real heel, like he was fighting like a heel at Backlash.
Yeah.
And they made Trick Williams look like the good guy. And, you know, because obviously they're obviously going on a run. You know, there's going to be the action figure. There's going to be T-shirt coming out soon, and it's going to, you know, it's going to fly off the shelves, isn't it, everywhere? You know, because all the kids, and even like probably, you know, us big kids like me and you are probably going to want it. Do you know what I mean? So
He has come out
he is,
looking like a megastar.
yeah. So he's, you know, they realise, oh shit, he can't be a heel. You know, we need to turn him face. How are we going to do that? Yeah, let's do this silly segment. And, you know, he's going to come out, and then Sammy's going to come out, like sticking in mud, like the party pooper, you know, like, oh, you know, everyone's having fun. No, everyone stop having fun there. You know, it's serious, like, you know, you know, it's so clever how they done it. I thought it was great. It's like you said at first, the first 10 minutes you're watching it, thinking, what is going on here? It makes no sense. But then it all sort of like, you know, as the great saying in wrestling, as they say, let it play out.
Yeah.
And then once it was played out, you know, you fully was on board with it, weren't you? And you fully thought, you know what, I really enjoyed that. You know, so that was great.
And I'm with you. I think Sami Zayn played his part in this brilliantly.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit about the Backlash stuff in a minute. So yeah, that was, you know, the funeral of the Gingerbread Man. I think it was a classic, and I think in 10 years' time, I think we will still be looking back at that the same as we looked back at some of the stuff that The Rock done, some of the stuff that Stone Cold's done in the past, some of the stuff that DX has done in the past. I think that episode, or certainly that end scene, will be on a highlight reel somewhere in 10 years' time.
100%. It's like, you know, like the classic comedy stuff. It probably made no sense at the time, but like, how many times have you gone back and watched the Rock and Sock Connection, This Is Your Life episode, you know? And it was like, it was so silly, wasn't it? But it was like, that was like a classic thing. Like, you had The Rock and Trick Williams who played it so well, and it's just so cool that even though he's doing something silly like the Gingerbread Man, he looked cool doing it, you know? And it was just like, you know, and you just couldn't help, you just glued to it, you know? Yeah, I absolutely loved it. And I loved it. I enjoyed these match at Backlash because I was actually looking forward. One of the things I was really looking forward to at Backlash, like, I'm just looking forward to anything Trick Williams does now. And I just can't wait to watch his matches, his promos, you know, his vignettes. I just can't wait. Anything Trick Williams, I'm behind now. And it's, you know, I feel they needed like a shot up the arse, you know, WWE, because they needed, you know, they needed, you know, some fresh talent, you know, to come through. It was getting a bit stale, you know. And I think another thing coming, I think Seth Rollins being back is a great thing, because I always enjoyed Seth Rollins' character as his promos, and he's like, you know, and he's like, you know, his comedy work, but also what a great talent. But I really would love to see Seth in AEW. I think you could definitely book some great matches, wouldn't you? Kenny, Hangman, you know. It would be some barn burners, wouldn't it? Like, you know, like,
I think that's a conversation
for another time.
But look, if you get me into that, I'm going to go way off track.
I know. In the week, we'll cover Backlash briefly now. But I know, like, I don't know if you want to bring it up or me, and we'll both go on it. But I know when we spoke, you know, the day after the Monday after Backlash, we both had the exact same criticism of Backlash, and we could both tell, it's the first thing we both said, wasn't it? So I don't know if you want to pick up on it or.
Okay, well, yeah, okay. I'll introduce it, and then you can tell me your because I was in complete agreement with what you said.
Yeah.
So first of all, overall Backlash, I'm going to say I thought it was okay. Right,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be heavily critical of it. I actually thought, in terms of a pay-per-view, and I've got to admit,
it was missing that wow factor, though, wasn't it? It was like the matches weren't bad and the characters weren't bad. Like I said, you know, it needed to me to look a bit more special. It needed a special ring, or like, you know, a special background, and you know, like it needed to be more. But then again, I think Backlash is always the difficult one, because it's such a let me down after. It's like a month after WrestleMania, and you know, you're used to watching the glitz and glamour of WrestleMania, where it's like the Super Bowl or like, you know, the World Cup final or something. You know, it's like watching that. You're watching it and you're thinking, oh, this ain't that special, you know. But
we had a total of 5 matches, of which one of them was like was a comedy match, which is probably more than. I felt like there was more wrestling on it than I expected, because I know a lot of pay-per-views recently have been heavily criticised in the fact that there's only maybe been 4 matches on the card, and even when you've added up the total wrestling time, it's been really, really poor compared to, like, based on the fact that it's like a 2.5 hour pay-per-view. So the first thing I will say is that actually we got a fair amount of wrestling, which I was happy about. The opening match, I believe, was Braun Breaker and Seth. I think that was the first match, wasn't it? So we'll talk about that one first.
Yeah.
We both came to the same conclusion here. Overall, I thought it was a good match.
Because of Seth, because of his work, to be honest with you. It was more Seth, which I don't want to interrupt you here, but I just want to say before you were I'm a huge Bron Breakker fan, and it's
Me
the
too.
nostalgia that he's the Steiner brothers, he's the Steiner brothers, which are the legendary tag team, Big Papa Pump Scott, which who didn't love Big Papa Pump, legend in this, his nephew, and obviously Rick Steiner, he's the son of Rick Steiner, and he's a little Steiner, I think he called him one of the babies, didn't he? Baby Steiner, didn't he? Thing. And it's like, you want to see that nostalgia because it's someone's son in it, and he looks a bit like his dad and his uncle. And it's like, I love him so much, and I think he's got such potential, But yeah, as you're going to say, I know what you're going to say. I'm sorry that I've interrupted you with it now. But I feel as I say, he is not the final product yet, and he's missing TV time and general match time. Some of the stuff he done, it just looked like he's got these explosive moves, like he spear, he runs through the ropes, and he's so explosive, he's so quick, he's so strong, he's an intelligent, you can tell he's an intelligent athlete, but he's missing this final product. And I think if it wasn't for the fact that he was in the ring with such a seasoned veteran and such a ring technician like Seth Rollins, who can make things happen, if he was in a ring with someone else, it would have looked terrible, but like Seth was bringing it back. But there's a few times he missed the big moves and that, and he barely, it didn't look believable, it looked fake. And I know obviously wrestling is fake. I'm sorry, it's not fake. People are fake. Wrestling isn't fake. That's what I will say. It's scripted entertainment, but it's, it's just missing that wow factor, that final clinical thing for me. And, like you said, but you're going to pick it up because I know you was telling me, wasn't you, like about, there not being enough time now for wrestlers. Because I'll pick up, back in the day you had the house shows, and you had not only the house shows, you had Raw and SmackDown, but you also had like shows like Velocity over the years. You had Heat, you had Superstars, where like these people that didn't get the time to have a match on Raw or SmackDown would have a match practice, and like practice makes perfect with everything, doesn't it? So you need to practice your craft to be good at it, If you right to that?
I think, okay, so first of all, I'm going to say I think they got the result right. I think it was the right thing to do for Breaker to get the win. I think that was needed. It was a bit botchy. There was a couple of the Frankensteiners that were botched, and it looked like that he went to do the third one, I think, just because he botched the other two. It was almost like they were trying to prove a point. There was a lot of stuff that you could clearly see that they were calling in the ring, or it was more Seth. Seth was calling the match as it was going. He was kind of, but they made it too obvious. And again, I think this comes down to, like you were saying, it's a lack of practice. There's too much emphasis for me. And again, this is maybe a bigger discussion for another time, but there's too much time being taken up on entrances and not enough in-ring work on a weekly basis for a lot of these guys that they need to turn into the next big megastars, right? By the time that Jericho, Edge, Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, Triple H, by the time that they were the same age as Braun Breaker, right, they weren't making those mistakes. They weren't botching moves because they'd had so many hours behind them.
Yeah.
Actual kind of live, pay-per-view shows where the matches actually meant something, and a lot more. I felt like there was a lot more eyes on them. They weren't allowed to make those errors, right? The people they were working with didn't allow them to make those errors. And I just feel like he probably hasn't had enough time. And I know some people would defend it and go, oh yeah, but he's been out. He had a hernia op. So he's got a bit of ring rust. It's going to take a little bit of time, right? Well, I've just got one name to give you, right? If we're talking about ring rust, right? Will Ospreay ain't got no ring rust. That guy had neck surgery, came back
again,
and has been absolutely flawless, right? So if you've got it and you've done the hours, right, and you've done the hard work, you don't get the ring rust, or you know how to deal with it. You know how to get through a match and to not botch it. And that was my biggest criticism.
Do you know what though? Ospreay's just got such an opportunity to have more matches, and like he come through very differently, obviously, to Braun Raker, like Braun Steiner. He sort of like he was made, wasn't he, already, because his dad and his uncle were famous wrestlers, and he got like a a shortcut into the industry where Ospreay had to learn his craft all around the UK, and then he went off to Japan and become such a megastar, and then he'd already and then he'd already had such reputation before he'd even had stepped foot on AEW. Not only that, I think it's great that Tony Khan allows his superstars like Ospreay to go off and still fight in Japan and still fight. Like, he probably has returns up. I don't think he's done in a little while, but he was recently, since he's been signed to AEW, he's coming back and having matches at Revolution in London and stuff like that. And it's like, I think it's good because Tony Khan understands that it's all experience, and it's like, it's them getting repetitions in and having practice, I think he's probably happy at the fact that they're not as happy having a match once, twice a week on AEW. They want to have 3 or 4 matches, and I think he loves that about his superstars, and I think, I think it's great. I think that is great. Yeah.
And I think that's where you hit the nail on the head, that WWE will not let their talent go out to any other company. And they're not doing the house shows like they used to do the house shows. So they're losing that opportunity to really kind of perfect their craft. And I think they've got to be careful on this, because you can't keep going on and having these botched matches. There's LA Knight's another one, right? Again, LA Knight, it felt like 2, maybe 3 years ago, had a rocket strapped to him, and he was he was the guy that everyone wanted to see. They wanted to hear him on the mic.
I think they missed the trick not giving him the title for a little while. I think
he's made a lot of botches.
He's
made a lot of botches.
Yeah, and the thing is with LA Knight now, as good as his character work is, he's not a spring chicken anymore. He's 40s, isn't he? So it's sort of like the same sayings. I like LA Knight, and it's like, but yeah, I feel like if he would have had more practice, he would have been the ideal person when he was like red hot. The title run they gave to Jey Uso, I think him winning it would have been a bigger thing for me,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought it was an all right pay-per-view overall. I mean, what did you how did you feel about the Jacob Fatu Roman Reigns match? I know you're not a big Roman fan.
Let's quickly just briefly cover the Trick Williams Sami Zayn, because we've spoken a lot about that anyway. And then I think because I've got quite a few notes on the Fatu Reigns thing as well. So Trick Williams Sami Zayn, again, did they get the right outcome for you?
Yeah, I didn't hate it, because obviously, like, they've made obviously like Trick into the baby face now, and he clearly, if there's no doubt in your head, you could tell watching it that Sami Zayn is definitely a heel now, and so Trick's the baby face, which I feel they needed to do. I mean, what did you feel about the outcome?
I don't hate it, but I feel like they might have missed an opportunity here to have maybe given Sammy a tainted win. If you're turning Sammy heel and we're doing like this clear-cut flip, it's like a double turn, isn't it? You're doing a clear-cut double turn, Sammy going heel, Trick going face. They sort of did it at Mania, but didn't really hit home with it. It wasn't like a Bret Austin, in that match where it was like you could clearly see a double turn. Brett's gone heel, Austin's gone face.
Hero Austin. Austin looked at the end.
I felt like they
sharpshooter, he passed out.
I felt like they needed a moment like that when perhaps Sammy gets a tainted win, and then they're 1-1, and then you can then finish off the trilogy. Right. And again, it will be good for Trick Williams, because Sami Zayn is a great wrestler. Sami Zayn is a great in-ring performer. He can call matches, right? He's reliable. He doesn't fuck up. He doesn't botch, right? So he's like the perfect guy to give Trick Williams 3 really good matches with. And then, Trick comes out of the trilogy with the 2-1 victory. He's got the belt. It's a little bit like do you remember when Cena first won the US title and he had this nice little trilogy? It might have been a best of 5 with Booker T.
Yeah.
Again, Booker T.
I do remember that was the United States title one, right?
Seasoned pro, John Cena. They already knew where he was going to go. They knew he was going to be a future champion at that point, but gave him 5 matches against Booker T. Or it might have even been 7. I can't remember.
Yeah, I do not. I can't remember the number, but I remember.
But it did wonders for John Cena, is what I'm saying. And I just think another match with Sami Zayn would have done wonders for Trick Williams. I didn't hate it. I just think that if it was me booking, that's how I would have done
Do
it.
you know what? I didn't think of it like that until you mentioned it, Sarah. But yeah, I don't hate that idea because it's always good as well. Like, because he's the big baby face and have the baby face like chasing, and it's like the excitement when he eventually, even maybe if it took him a couple of months even to win it back, and he's like the big excitement, he wins, it'd be a big, it would sell tickets and like make people want to watch the pay-per-views, like, because you think, oh, Trick's going to win the title back, and I do agree with that, yeah.
So, but other than that, I thought overall the match was decent. That was just my opinion of something different that they could have tried, and I think it might have worked better for Trick Williams in the long run because like I say, he could briefly lose the belt, and then it's about the chase. And when you're chasing, as you know, the crowd get more behind you when you're, during the chase than they do when you're the champion. So that's how I would have done that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of a bit of fun, a bit of Danhausen to cover. This again was, it was crazy. You knew it was going to be crazy. You knew it was going to be a fun match. You knew it was going to be a comedy match.
Danhausen for me is like that. He sort of fitted into that Santino Morella role.
Yeah.
Where like you just love Santino. I don't think he's good as Santino. I think, there's other people that have done that role, but I think Santino, he was great. But I think Danhausen is like Truth was for a long time, and it's like, you just think that you use a lot of the backstage segments where like you think, what's he going to say next, and it's just like, you sort of need that, especially for like the kids watching and stuff like that. They love all that. But like Danhausen's figures are going to sell a lot for kids and stuff like that. So it's just
the T-shirt apparently was the biggest seller at WrestleMania.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Apparently that everyone was either wearing.
Didn't he come out in the car, a little car and stuff like that? It was quite entertaining, wasn't it?
They were either wearing a WrestleMania T-shirt or a Danhausen T-shirt. Apparently they were the two that
I
were.
believe it though. You know what I mean? I believe it.
Look, in terms of the match was wacky. The Minihausen, I actually thought the Minihausen was quite good.
No, he was a good wrestler, wasn't he?
I don't know who that is, but someone will know who it is. He's clearly like a little mini luchador. I thought he was great. I thought Miz is selling, and is it
going back to what we said earlier? Kit Wilson.
Kit Wilson's selling.
Yeah.
I thought was really good.
He's another character, Kit Wilson. He isn't great, but he's like that character. He comes out and loses everywhere. He makes a fool of himself. It's just like a let me up sort of moment. Like Jelly Roll beat him and stuff like that. But it's great, 'cause I'm a big Jelly Roll fan. So it's like, he come out. He's like, who could this country singer come out and defeat? It's not gonna it's not gonna hurt them. They're not gonna have an ego, because I don't think. So I don't think like Roman Reigns would be happy Jelly Roll coming out and beating him, and stuff like that. So it's like you need people like that in the company. It goes back to the variety thing,
But definitely for me, the bit in this match that I got to say, I was watching it and I was enjoying it and I was kind of chuckling. But there was one bit in this match that just like I did sort of pop and it did crack me up because it just caught me off guard. But it was a bit where Kit Wilson has got the Minihausen and he throws him back into that crate or whatever it was, or that machine. He threw him back in there and closed the door. And I was half expecting, I knew he was going to change. So I knew that this door was going to open, but I thought that then perhaps it was going to be like a giant Hausen. That's what I had in my head. I thought he's thrown the Minihausen's in, he's gone back in the machine, he's now going to come out like a giant Hausen. Well, he just duplicated him, and these, was it 5 or 6 of these little Minihausens just came out and just pounced on them.
It was great. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was
it was classic.
Great. Yeah, it's so stupid. It was great, wasn't it? It was like the sort of like the stuff they done in the early 90s. It wasn't like, but like the Doink the Clown and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It was like Doink would just get one over on people all the time, because I know they had the evil Doink point, but when Doink was the good guy, and he'd throw buckets of water over people, was that? It just. Yeah. So let me up, isn't it? It's just like funny, and you need people like Miz and that in the ring because he's serious. No, he's a serious character. You can tell he looks visually frustrated and stuff like that, which makes it just so much more interesting, Because if he would have started if he would have started like looking like he was enjoying himself, it wouldn't have mattered as much, know. So, but yeah, it was really great on the whole.
I thought it was a funny bit, definitely.
Yeah.
Then we had a match that was a really good technical wrestling match. So it was the kind of match that I think if I was watching AEW, I'd have sat and happily enjoyed. Io Sky against Oscar. Now, again, you know, we know that both of those, in terms of female wrestlers, like in-ring ability, brilliant. Didn't realize it at the time, but it seems like it might have been a bit of a sort of a goodbye match for Oscar. I don't know when
Yeah,
they're
I
gonna.
don't know what's happening.
I haven't had a chance to have a look at the reports on that, but I mean, it could be. I don't know. We think maybe is she another one that has been released, but maybe they wanted to give her, out of respect, they maybe wanted to give her a bit more of a send off than the others. So, but anyway, I think we'll leave that one for next week, because I reckon this week there'll be some news coming out about that. But it was a good match. I enjoyed the match, and again, I think it was the correct outcome with Io Sky picking up the win. Then we come on to the main event. So we've got, on paper, this is a great match. It's had a decent build.
I like it personally. It goes back to it as well, and like, you know, I'm not gonna go out. I watch Raw. You know, they're leaning a lot more into the bloodline thing, you know, and it's like, you know, the Samoan dynasty family with Roman, you know, the Usos get involved with it. I'm actually quite enjoying the storyline as it's unfolding, to be honest with you. And, you know, it's like nice that a match actually means something and has a storyline and a reason why they're fighting, you know, rather than just, you know, which WWE's lacked for the last little while, to be honest with you. Yeah.
I actually think they did a really good job with this. I thought Jacob Fatu came out of this looking really, really good. I felt the amount of times that he's
definitely an exciting superstar.
Yeah, that you thought he was going to be out of it, and then he kicked out at the right time. I felt the timing of the kick outs and the you know, the near falls and stuff, I thought was pretty good. Overall, the mixture of the brutality of it, but with him when he goes through the gears, you know, when he does that thing of like, what's his catchphrase? No breaks.
No breaks. Yeah.
Yeah, he literally he shows you that.
Explosive.
He shows you that catchphrase in the ring.
He reminds me a little bit. It reminds me a little bit. It was obviously a relation to him, because it's this great Samoan dynasty we've probably got to be now. You know, there's no doubt, you know, there was other great wrestling families like the Harts and stuff like that. There can't be any doubt now that the Samoan dynasty family, the Inoue family, I just seem to rattle them off, don't they? It's like, you know, like everyone just built for wrestling. And he reminds me a lot of Umaga, the way Umaga used to fight, you know, he was just explosive.
The way he moves.
He was a big man, but he was fast, you know, and athletic, you know, and he shouldn't, just because of his size and his build, he shouldn't be able to do the things he can do, but somehow he does it.
I think they might have mentioned that on commentary, actually. I think it might have been Michael Cole that made a reference to it. But yeah, definitely, I'm in agreement with you on that. And I thought the match was good.
I mean, how good will he be in the future that I feel they're going to work with him? They're going to, they build him into this big, scary heel character where, like, you know, these heroes like, you know, Cody Rhodes and that. When Cody Rhodes is, you know, the big hero against, you know, fighting the big, scary monster, like Umaga was with John Cena and stuff like that. I feel like there's a lot of room for that. You know, he's obviously a bit of a face, like sort of heelish character now. They could turn him fully heel, where he's just this big monster, you know, like pair him with someone.
I'm glad you've brought this up, because this is how I was going to finish this little bit off, because I'm with you on this. And when I watched Raw, the one thing I would say about the end part of Raw, you know, where they've had this brawl and it seems like Jacob Fatu's got the better of him, I just felt like I was a bit confused, but it felt like the crowd were a little bit confused. It feels like at the minute that the crowd don't really know who they should be booing and who they should be cheering in this.
Yeah.
Right? Because Roman Reigns comes out and everyone, you know, he gets such a good reception.
They want to throw the hand in the air.
Yeah. Jacob Fatu's music hit, and he's still got a really big reaction. Like, people were excited to see him. And then he's done this really sort of intense. It feels like in any other era, that would have been a clear heel turn. That would have been a clear. The crowd are all of a sudden going to start booing him, but it didn't feel like they were. It felt like there was little murmurs.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that people want something new, and where Roman was champion for 4 or 5 years. You know, before, I think people, must say, like Roman, people are just a bit bored with Roman. Like people are getting a bit bored with Cody Rhodes, because he's been the title picture for the last 4 years. I think people like something new, you know, and that's like what's going back to again.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
But overall, I thought it was good. I felt it was important to make Jacob Fatu look as strong as they've made him look. And I think they've done a really good job of that. Really, really good job of that. Okay, right. We got a couple of minutes left, right? We're just going to wrap this up, just talking briefly about Fairway to Hell. Okay. So this was just feels like it was an episode of Collision that they gave a special name to. It was filmed in an arena. You've been telling me a little bit about this. It's like a sort of a golf simulator type arena. My friend's
a really big fan of it. He's a big golf fan.
It's like an artificial golf green inside an arena. If you can picture that.
They do the drive, like the start bit on the simulator, and then they'll work out where the ball would have landed on the greens, and then they put it on the green, so they played the last bit, and it's in a big arena, and where golf's quite predominantly like sport, it's not got a lot of atmosphere, everyone has to be quiet, and it's the little, it's people going mad, people having a good time.
More like a Ryder Cup feel.
Yeah, you're having a drink and chanting, and there's like music involved, and there's a lot more like lights and fireworks and that, and it just feels like more exciting, like an arena sport, and it's getting quite popular. So, I feel Tony Khan was smart there to go back to this like he did with it, like go into popular culture, So, but no, it was a great thing. I thought it was a great opportunity. It took well, to be honest. Yeah.
So to paint the picture, they've got a wrestling ring next to an artificial golf green with bunkers, and and so you've got Darby Allin versus Pac for the AEW World Title. The match almost immediately spills out the ring.
Great night.
Who was it? I can't remember. Was it Darby that went out there first? I can't remember. One of them just literally just marched out and was like, right. I think it was Darby. Darby just basically went, right, we're not fighting in the ring. He got out the ring. He marched onto this golf green. He sort of did a little bit of like a, come on then. Pac's like, okay, yeah, I'm having some of that. He's gone and followed him, and then they had a couple of the great little spots on the golf green. Some suplexes into the bunker. Darby, I felt like, did this mad sort of, or what do they call that? John Woo running drop kick that he does that was just brilliant, and then it sort of moves back in towards the ring. And then you've got a bit of Death Rider's interference, and they're setting up some tables. And I'm having a look at this balcony, right? And I'm going, hang on a minute. They're setting up tables here. They're too far away from the ring. There's nothing else really that they can use to jump off of. And I'm looking at this balcony with all these fans on it, and I'm thinking, that looks really high.
It gives you when I watch that, it's all giving me ECW vibes, like that. Yeah.
It was tall, right? And so anyway, they're fighting, and they've gone up the stairs. They're on this balcony, and then they've done this spot where Pac just launches Darby Allin off this balcony. There's 4 tables set up. He misses the first 2, crashes through the next 2. Looks like a really bad drop, bad fall for Darby. Then they film Pac running down the stairs, which goes to show you how high this balcony is. He sort of ran down 2 flights of stairs to get back to the level where Darby was. And then somehow, he's rolled him in the ring, and you think like Darby's finished. But, again, it's this never say die. He's on self-destruct at the minute. And, and he comes back.
I don't know if he can keep on going like this without actually seriously hurting himself. It's just crazy, I think there was a spot he done the other week where it was like, me and you, and I said to him, it was a few weeks, I can't remember who he was wrestling.
Was it the Tommaso Ciampa one off the top?
When he just got like, when he fell off as well with the Brody King thing, and he fell off into the exposed concrete, and he just he's back. And I'm thinking, there's no way you can make that safe, there's no way you can make that safe. But then it's probably like, like I said, I compared him to Mankind. It's like that King in the Ring where, where Undertaker throws him off the hill. There's no way. I think there's a great line on the commentators. I think it was JR. He said, there's some idiot at home saying this is fake. He's like, sure, how can you fake something like that?
No.
There's no faking, and that's hurting you, like that. So
he is unique in that way, and I feel like that really helps with the story that they're telling. That he is a guy that won't give up. He will never back down. There's no move too extreme for him, and ultimately that could be his downfall. Right? We don't know. We're going to find that out in the.
Foley. Foley personally, Mankind. Dude Love, whatever you want to call him, Cactus Jack's my favourite. But, you know, he didn't have as long a career as he probably could have if he would have, like, you know, not done all the big risks. You know, I think he retired quite young, and then he wasn't ready to retire personally. You know, he just couldn't do it anymore. So, and I know he had the brief comeback, but, you know, he was in a lot of pain and that, you know. So I feel like he's another one of them where it was like, was it the saying, you know, the burning the candle at both ends kind of thing, you know?
Right, we have run out of time, Dino. So we're gonna wrap this up. Time flies when we're talking wrestling, okay?
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap up this episode, and then we'll bring out another episode next week. We'll see what Dynamite brings. We'll see what SmackDown and Raw brings this week. And how the stories progress, and we'll have a chat with that next week. If you've enjoyed the content, please make sure you hit subscribe. You know, you can watch us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. Please keep watching if you're enjoying the chat, and we'll keep making and delivering episodes. Okay, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks, guys. Just want to say as well, that was the truth, nothing but D-Truth. I'm going to work on that catchphrase. I'm going to work on that catchphrase, you know? Not as good as the lemon pepper 7.